I adjusted the strap of my emerald silk dress, the fabric cool against my skin. One last check in the reflection of the elevator doors before they slid open, revealing the entrance to Aurelia on the bay. The restaurant was a masterpiece of calculated opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, scattering fractured light across starched white tablecloths. Silverware gleamed under recessed spotlights, each piece perfectly aligned. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the San Francisco skyline, the lights of the city just beginning to challenge the deepening twilight. This was the kind of place where the cheapest glass of wine cost more than my weekly grocery budget. But my parents' 35th anniversary deserved nothing less. I'd even subjected myself to these hideously uncomfortable heels, the ones that pinched my toes with every step. Tonight mattered. Formal attire required, the heavy cardstock invitation had declared. I had complied. My mother, Meredith, spotted me immediately. Her silver-streaked hair was swept into an elegant chignon that perfectly complemented her burgundy gown. She glided across the marble floor, her pearl earrings catching the light. "Sloane, darling, you made it." Her smile was a perfect, polite curve, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She leaned in for an air kiss, her cheek brushing mine, enveloping me in a cloud of expensive, familiar perfume. "You'll be sitting over there, sweetheart, with the little ones. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you." I froze mid-step. The warmth of the room turned into a clammy chill. I followed her gesture, a perfectly manicured hand pointing toward a small, round table tucked into an alcove. It was practically in the shadow of a massive potted palm, near the swinging door that I assumed led to the kitchens. My 9-year-old nephew, Oscar, and 7-year-old niece, Rowan, were already there, scribbling intently on children's menus with restaurant-provided crayons. My stomach dropped like an elevator with snapped cables. A hot, prickling flush flooded my cheeks, and I felt my hands begin to tremble. I clasped them in front of me, digging my nails into my palms. "Mom, what?" "We needed you to balance out the children's table, Sloane," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, as if letting me in on a clever party-planning secret. "Someone has to keep an eye on them." "Keep an eye on them?" I repeated, my voice barely audible. "Their parents are right here." Meredith's smile tightened. "Don't be difficult, darling. It makes the seating work. Go on now." She gave my arm a little pat, the same dismissive pat she'd used when I was 12 and complaining about having to watch my younger siblings. Then she turned, her burgundy dress swirling, and glided back toward the main table, her social duties fulfilled. I stood rooted to the marble, the buzz of the restaurant fading to a dull roar in my ears. I turned my head slowly, taking in the main table. It was a majestic, long rectangle, dominating the center of the private dining room. 12 elegant place settings, crystal wine glasses, fine china rimmed with gold, and silver candlesticks. Every single adult member of the family was there. My brother, Elias, sat beside his wife, Miranda, their heads bent together in quiet conversation. My sister, Corinne, was laughing at something her husband, Mark, whispered in her ear. Aunt Loretta and Uncle Robert were there, my cousins, Jennifer and David. Even my recently married cousin, Stephanie, and her new husband had prime seats. Only I, Sloane Thompson, 29 years old, founder and chief designer of Thompson Design Studio, had been relegated to the corner, unmarried, unaccompanied, and apparently unworthy. A memory flashed, sharp and painful. Thanksgiving, 5 years ago. I'd brought Alex, my boyfriend at the time. We had sat at the adult table drinking wine, joining in conversations about politics and property values. There was no question of my adult status then, not with a man beside me. Now, without a wedding ring or even a +1 to validate my existence, I'd been demoted. My credentials for adulthood had apparently expired. A waiter approached me, his smile polite but strained. He was holding out one of the colorful menus, the one with cartoon seafood characters dancing across the top. "For the young lady," he said, his eyes flicking past me, not quite meeting my gaze. I wondered if he could feel the humiliation radiating from me in waves. Oscar looked up from his coloring, his face bright and innocent. "Aunt Sloane, do you want to use my blue crayon? I have green, too." I folded the children's menu in half, the cartoon lobster creasing down the middle. I set it back on the small table. "I need to make a business call," I said, my voice surprisingly clear. I grasped for any excuse, any lifeline to pull me out of this corner of shame. Mom's head snapped toward me from the main table. Her face tightened. "Really, Sloane? During a family celebration?" My father, Carter, looked over, his bow tie slightly askew against his crisp white collar. "Your work can wait for one evening, Princess." The childhood nickname, once a term of endearment, now felt like a verbal pat on the head, diminishing, patronizing. My siblings exchanged knowing glances. Elias whispered something to Miranda, who covered her smile with a napkin. They weren't just witnesses to this humiliation. They were complicit. This wasn't an oversight. It was a statement. In their eyes, my unmarried status trumped everything. The 6 years I'd spent building my design studio from nothing. The $3.2 million commercial renovation project I'd just landed, beating out firms twice my size. The feature in architecture design that called my work boundary-pushing yet timeless, none of it mattered, because I didn't have a husband. "I'll be right back," I said, turning toward the restrooms before anyone could object further. In the private, blissfully empty hallway, my hands shook so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I texted Alara, my best friend. "Change of plans. I'm celebrating tonight, just not here." The reply came almost instantly. "What happened? Are you okay?" I typed quickly, my thumbs flying, feeling both ridiculous and utterly justified. They seated me at the kids' table, literally, with crayons. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. "Get out of there, now." That's beyond disrespectful. That's a declaration of war. Standing in that quiet corridor with its tasteful sconces and abstract art, I faced a choice. I could return to that corner, swallow my pride, and endure an evening of condescension. Or I could walk out and face the inevitable family fallout. I made a quick calculation. I could spend the next 3 hours folding myself smaller and smaller to fit into their narrow definition of success. Or I could finally, for once, choose my own dignity. I walked back into the dining room. I went straight to the children's table and gathered my small clutch purse. "I've been called away on an emergency," I told Oscar and Rowan, my voice soft. Oscar looked up, his eyes wide with genuine disappointment. "But you just got here." I squeezed his shoulder gently. "I know, buddy. I'll make it up to you, I promise." I cast one cold, final glance toward the main table. The conversation had continued without me. My mother noticed first, her eyes widening. She rose halfway from her chair, her napkin falling to the floor. "Sloane, don't you dare." I walked out. Back straight, chin lifted, the click of my heels on the marble floor, the only sound in my ears. The whispers erupted behind me like sparks from a struck match. But for the first time in my 29 years, I chose myself over their approval. The maitre d' called me a car while I waited under the restaurant's burgundy awning. The San Francisco night air wrapped around me, cool and wonderfully indifferent to my family drama. My phone buzzed, a relentless vibration in my hand. Mom, Dad, Elias. I silenced each call, one by one. Alara's text appeared. "Where should I meet you?" I looked back at the glittering windows of Aurelia on the bay. Behind that glass, my family was continuing their celebration. Perhaps they were already forgetting the empty chair at the children's table. Or, more likely, they were spinning the narrative. My selfishness, my overreaction, my failure to be a team player. "Meet me at the Firefly," I texted back. "We have something better to celebrate. My independence." The Firefly was another world entirely. After the sterile, high-strung opulence of Aurelia, the Mission District wine bar felt like stepping into a warm, inviting hug. Edison bulbs cast a soft glow over exposed brick walls. Vintage rock posters were framed behind the bar, where a woman with sleeve tattoos poured generous glasses for the after-work crowd. No crystal chandeliers, no judgmental stares, just the comforting low hum of conversations that had nothing to do with my marital status. Alara burst through the door, her dark curls wind-blown. She spotted me in the back booth and wove between tables with the same purposeful stride that intimidated opposing attorneys in courtrooms. Her amber eyes narrowed as she slid into the seat across from me. "Tell me everything," she demanded, unwrapping her scarf. "And do not leave out a single humiliating detail." The words tumbled out of me. The gleaming restaurant, Meredith's cold air kiss, the small table, the crayons, the cartoon lobster. You should have seen their faces when I left, Alara. You would have thought I'd committed some unforgivable sin over a seating chart. I was twisting my napkin into a tight, tortured spiral. Alara leaned forward, her expression serious. "This isn't about tonight, Sloane. You know that. This is about a pattern." She was right. Of course she was right. The kids' table wasn't the first shot. It was just the final deafening insult in a long, quiet campaign of diminishment. "Remember the Callaway project presentation?" I asked, my voice tight. "The one I prepped for 3 weeks?" Mom introduced me to her friends as still figuring things out. "I've been running my own firm for 6 years." Alara nodded, her jaw tightening. "Or Christmas last year, when your dad gave a 15-minute toast praising Elias's stable accounting career, and then turned to you and asked if you were still doing that decorating thing." "That decorating thing," I repeated, the memory stinging. "The thing that's about to be featured in architecture design for the second time." The waiter approached, a bearded man with kind eyes who clocked my white-knuckled grip on the shredded napkin. "Rough night?" "Independence Day celebration," Alara explained smoothly, ordering a bottle of their best Cabernet. Once he left, I continued, the dam of my frustration finally breaking. "When I bought my loft, Mom actually said, 'That's great, dear, but don't wait too long to find someone. Single women living alone can be targets.' As if my personal safety is contingent on having a husband." "She's from another era, Sloane," Alara said, though not unkindly. "Dad was worse. He called my business a nice little hobby to keep you busy until you settle down. Even after I landed the Harrison building renovation, all he said was, 'Impressive. They let someone your age work on something that expensive?'" The waiter returned with our wine. I took a large swallow, letting the rich, dark fruit coat my tongue before continuing. Every single accomplishment qualified, minimized. It's never, ever enough, because I don't have a wedding ring. Nothing I achieve professionally will ever matter as much as my failure to secure a husband. My voice caught, and I hated the sound of it. Alara reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "That's their broken measuring stick, Sloane. Not yours. I've spent my entire adult life trying to earn their approval," I whispered, the realization settling like concrete in my stomach. "Graduated summa cum laude, built a 7-figure business from scratch, bought property in one of the most expensive cities in the world. All of it just hoping they'd finally see me as successful." My phone buzzed against the table. Mom, then Dad, then Elias. I silenced each call, one after another, the small vibration a physical manifestation of their anger. Every family gathering, I went on. The same questions. "Who are you dating?" "Never." "What are you designing?" Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, always some passive-aggressive comment about my biological clock or how I'm too picky. I took another drink. Last Thanksgiving, Miranda asked if I'd considered freezing my eggs, since I was so focused on career, in front of everyone. "Your sister-in-law is a special kind of awful," Alara muttered. Remember Jason's wedding reception? When Mom seated me with her friend's single divorced sons instead of with my cousins? Because, and I quote, networking is important, dear. God, the orthodontist with the bad toupee, and the podiatrist who talked about foot fungus through 3 courses. Despite everything, I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. My phone lit up again. Corinne. The family alarm system was now fully activated. Why am I still trying to prove myself to people who will never, ever see me? The question wasn't rhetorical. I genuinely didn't know the answer. Because they're family, Alara said simply. We're programmed to seek their approval, even when they don't deserve to give it. Their approval isn't worth having on these terms. The words felt revolutionary as they left my mouth. I'm done, I said, the anger that had been building all evening finally hardening into a cold, clear resolve. I'm done trying. My phone vibrated continuously now. A cascade of texts and missed calls. I stared at the screen, at the list of names: Meredith, Carter, Elias, Corinne. I held down the power button. The screen went black with a satisfying finality. I am done shrinking myself to fit their definition of success, I said, raising my glass. Alara clinked hers against mine. About damn time. I woke to my phone vibrating itself toward the edge of my nightstand. The morning light was gray and unforgiving, slicing through the blinds of my loft. I squinted at the screen, my head thick from the Cabernet. I froze. 107 unread messages, 83 missed calls. The events of last night flooded back. Walking out of Aurelia, my emerald dress catching the night air, leaving my entire family staring after me. For the first time, I had chosen myself. Now came the consequences. I propped myself against the headboard, bracing for the onslaught as I began to scroll. Mom, Sloane Elizabeth Thompson. Call me this instant. Your behavior was appalling. Dad, you embarrassed this entire family, Sloane. I expect better from you. Elias, way to ruin Mom and Dad's anniversary. Real mature, sis. Corinne, you made Mom cry. Are you happy now? The messages blurred together into a single suffocating symphony of guilt and accusations. Overreacted, tantrum, selfish, embarrassing, childish, disrespectful. My chest tightened with each word. That familiar autonomic urge to apologize, to smooth things over, rose in my throat like bile. I was the problem. I was the one who had disrupted the peace. Then I saw it. A single message, buried in the avalanche of condemnation. It was from Aunt Loretta, my mother's sister. Time stamped 2:14 a.m. You did nothing wrong, Sloane. That seating arrangement was cruel, and your mother knew it. I'm proud of you for leaving. I read it once, twice, 3 times. I couldn't quite believe the words. Aunt Loretta, the quiet family peacekeeper, the one who always smoothed over arguments and never took sides. She was validating my feelings. She was on my side. The tight, suffocating band around my chest loosened, just a fraction. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't overreacted. I returned to the family group chat, my eyes newly sharpened. I wasn't just reading for emotional impact anymore. I was reading for data. Something shifted in my perception as I examined their messages with my designer's eye, the same eye that notices when a client says they want modern, but their inspiration photos are all screaming traditional. They were all using the exact same language: tantrum, overreaction, nothing. Mom to Corinne, accidentally sent to the whole group. Your sister had a tantrum over nothing at dinner. Just ignore her, she'll come crawling back. Dad to Uncle Robert. Sloane overreacted to a simple seating arrangement. You know how she gets. Elias to our cousin David. She stormed out over nothing. Typical Sloane drama. They were coordinating. They were controlling the narrative. If everyone in the family agreed that it was nothing, then my reaction must, by default, be everything. It was a classic tactic. Isolate the target. define their reaction as hysterical, and wait for them to capitulate. But Aunt Loretta's message was the crack in their fortress. It told me one crucial thing. Not everyone bought their version of the story, and if not everyone bought it, it meant they knew, on some level, that they were wrong. Why else work so hard to justify it? My design mind clicked into analytical mode, the same process I used when troubleshooting a difficult client renovation. I grabbed a notebook from my nightstand and started categorizing their responses. 1. Guilt tactics. You made your mother cry. You ruined their anniversary. 2. Appeal to obligation. After everything we've done for you? 3. Dismissal of feelings. It was just a seating arrangement. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. 4. Character assassination. Selfish, childish, dramatic. A new text from my parents arrived as I was writing, a joint message. You clearly overreacted last night, but we are willing to overlook it if you apologize. Sunday brunch at the house. 11:00 a.m. We'll consider the matter closed. My finger hovered over the keyboard. 6 months ago, I would have already been drafting the apology. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. I was stressed from work. I would have been desperate to smooth things over, to be allowed back into the fold, regardless of who was right. But something had shifted inside me. That text, it wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. It assumed I would fall in line. It assumed their forgiveness was the prize I was seeking. For the first time, I saw the manipulation with perfect ice-cold clarity, and with that clarity came power. I typed a response, deleted it, then tried again. Finally, I sent a simple, terrifying sentence. I need space. I'll reach out when I'm ready. Her reply was instantaneous. You don't take space from family, Sloane. Dad followed up 2 seconds later. We expect you on Sunday. Period. I put the phone on silent and tossed it onto the other pillow. I got out of bed and went to my laptop. I had a major client presentation in 3 days for the Braxton Tech headquarters. It was a $4 million project. My family's drama would have to wait. 2 days passed in a blur of fabric swatches, 3D renderings, and contractor negotiations. I'd successfully walled off the family drama, funneling my anger and frustration into my work. I was in the zone, finalizing the lighting plan, when my building's intercom buzzed. I frowned. I wasn't expecting a delivery. Hello? Sloane, it's us. Buzz us in. My mother's voice, clipped and impatient. My blood ran cold. I'm in the middle of work, Mom. This isn't a good time. Don't be ridiculous. We're your parents. Let us up. A moment later, the buzzing became incessant. A long, angry, continuous bzzz. They were just holding the button down, knowing my neighbors would complain. Furious, I jammed the talk button. Stop it. You're bothering my neighbors. I'll be right down. We're not meeting in the lobby. Let us in. I slammed the door button to unlock the main entrance, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was an escalation, a breach of my defenses. When my doorbell rang 60 seconds later, I took a deep breath and pulled it open. There they stood, Meredith and Carter. My mother pushed past me without waiting for an invitation, her heels clicking aggressively on my polished concrete floors. This has gone on long enough, she announced, stopping in the middle of my living room. My father followed, his jaw set, his bow tie perfectly straight, even with his casual weekend blazer. You're acting like a child, Sloane, which frankly is exactly why we seated you with the children. I closed the door slowly, deliberately. I took a deep breath, drawing strength from my own space. We stood in my living room, surrounded by the physical evidence of my success. The custom walnut and steel bookshelf I'd designed and had fabricated, the architectural awards on the floating shelves, the framed, oversized copy of my architecture design feature, the one they'd never acknowledged. For the first time, I noticed how my father's eyes darted around. He was taking in the 20-foot ceilings, the wall of windows overlooking Lake Merritt, the Italian leather sofa that had cost more than his first car. This was my territory, not theirs. The power dynamic had shifted. "Respect goes both ways," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "You seated me with children because I wasn't married. That's the truth. Let's not pretend it's anything else." Meredith waved her hand dismissively, a gesture designed to sweep my feelings into a dustpan. "You are making a mountain out of a molehill." It was a seating chart, for heaven's sake. "My accomplishments and my age should earn me a place at the adult table," I said, gesturing to the magazine feature on the wall. "This isn't about seating, it's about respect, and you have consistently refused to give me any." My father's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, adopting the stance he used when he was about to lay down the law. "This attitude, Sloane, is exactly what will get you excluded from future family events." The threat hung in the air between us. 6 years ago, it would have crushed me. 6 days ago, it would have sent me scrambling. Tonight I found I was willing to pay that price. "If that's the cost of having boundaries," I said quietly, "I'll pay it." Their faces. It was a look I'd never seen before, a mixture of shock and disbelief, as if their toaster had just started quoting Shakespeare. I had deviated from the script, and they were utterly lost. They left in a stunned, heavy silence. No hugs, no "we love yous," no goodbyes. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, waiting for the familiar crushing wave of guilt and tears. It never came. Instead, I felt only a profound, echoing relief, like I had just set down a suitcase I'd been carrying for 29 years without ever realizing how heavy it was. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Alara's name flashed on the screen. "Your mom just called me," she said without preamble. "Apparently, I'm a bad influence who is poisoning you against your family. I'm bringing takeout." "Wine or whiskey?" "Both," I said, sinking onto my sofa. By the time Alara arrived with bags of Thai food and a bottle of Oban, my apartment phone was ringing, the landline I kept from my building's intercom. I checked the caller ID. Aunt Loretta. "Your mother called me ranting," she said, her voice calm and dry. "Said you threw them out of your apartment." I told them to leave, after they threatened to exclude me from the family." "Good," she said simply. "You did the right thing, Sloane. Healthy boundaries aren't rejection. They're self-respect. Don't let her bully you." I hung up, feeling overwhelmed. "Part of me feels relieved," I admitted to Alara, unpacking containers of pad thai and green curry. "But there's also this grief, like I'm mourning the relationship I wished we had." "You're not rejecting them," Alara said, pouring me a generous glass of whiskey. "You're rejecting their disrespect. There's a difference." My phone lit up with a text message. "My nephew, Oscar. Miss you, Aunt Sloane. When are you coming over?" My heart contracted. Oscar and Rowan were innocent in all this. "The kids," I said to Alara. "They shouldn't be collateral damage in this." I texted Oscar back. "Miss you too, buddy. I'll see you soon, I promise. How's that science project coming?" Setting boundaries with Meredith and Carter didn't have to mean cutting off everyone else. Some relationships were worth preserving, just differently. As if on cue, my business line rang. I glanced at the caller ID, the VP from Braxton Tech. I picked up. "Sloane, you knocked it out of the park with that presentation today. The board unanimously approved your vision. The full $4 million. The contract is on its way." I hung up the phone, the contrast hitting me like a physical blow. In my professional world, my ideas were valued. My expertise was respected. I was boundary pushing. Only in my family was I still childish. Only in my family was I still inadequate. I surveyed my studio office with the same critical eye I applied to a client's space. Design boards lined the exposed brick wall, each one representing a 6-figure project. Client files sat in precise, orderly stacks on my glass-top desk, everything in its place. Controlled, methodical. That's how I would approach this. A week had passed since the confrontation at my loft. My phone showed 23 unread messages from my parents. I no longer ignored them. I archived them. They were no longer triggers for anxiety. They were data points. I pulled up my digital calendar, reviewing the upcoming family landmines. Oscar's birthday next Saturday. Memorial Day at the lake house 3 weeks after that. Each event required a decision: attend and establish new boundaries, or decline and maintain distance. If this were a design challenge, I murmured to myself, tapping my pen against the desk, what would the solution look like? The initial rush of victory had faded. That moment when they left my apartment, stunned into silence, had been exhilarating. But emotional highs don't build lasting foundations. I needed a strategy. I opened my notebook to a fresh page. Project, Thompson Family Recalibration. I drew a line down the center. On the left, relationships to preserve: Oscar, Rowan, Aunt Loretta, possibly Elias and Corinne. On the right, non-negotiable boundaries, equal treatment at gatherings, acknowledgement of professional status, no more marriage pressure. My assistant knocked lightly on the doorframe. "Sloane, your 2 is here early." "Thank you, Rachel," I said, closing the notebook. "Give me 5 minutes, then send them in." When she left, I picked up my phone. I didn't text my family. I texted Ilara. "I need the name of that therapist you mentioned." "The one who specializes in family dynamics." Ilara had insisted professional guidance wasn't admitting defeat. It was adding a specialist to my project team. My new therapist, Dr. Winter, was sharp, practical, and blessedly neutral. In our first session, she suggested I treat my family's communication patterns like any other data set. Document every interaction, she'd advised. What phrases trigger a defensive reaction? Which tactics do they employ most frequently? Knowledge is leverage. I was no longer just reacting. I was building infrastructure for the long term. The relative quiet of the past week was, as Dr. Winter had predicted, a strategic retreat before the next offensive. The pressure escalated predictably. My phone buzzed, a voicemail from an unknown number. I let it play, setting the phone on speaker. My mother's voice filled the room, trembling with calculated theatrical emotion. Sloane, darling, please pick up. It's your father. He had chest pains last night." A perfectly timed sob. "The doctor says it's stress. He's just so worried about you. Is this what you want, Sloane? To make your father ill with worry? Please, just call us." My stomach clenched. I almost called back instantly, the ingrained guilt flooding my system. He's sick. It's my fault. Then I remembered Dr. Winter's advice. Emotional blackmail is their most powerful tool. Before you react, verify. My fingers were shaking as I texted Aunt Loretta. "Mom just left me a voicemail. Said Dad had chest pains? Is he okay?" The reply came back in less than 30 seconds. "He's fine. Charles had indigestion from Teresa's spicy meatballs at the club last night. The doctor gave him antacids. Don't fall for the drama, Sloane. He's sitting on the couch watching golf right now." The cold, hard rage that filled me was clarifying. It wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was a lie. A cruel, calculated lie designed to break me. My phone lit up with Corinne's name. Against my better judgment, I answered, putting her on speaker. "Sloane? Thank God. They're trying, in their way." My sister's voice had that placating, wheedling tone I'd come to despise. "Dad's really upset. Mom is a wreck. Can't you just meet them halfway? Just apologize. For the sake of peace." I took a deep breath, scanning the index cards I'd prepared with Dr. Winter. I found the one labeled Sibling Pressure, Flying Monkey. "I appreciate your concern, Corinne," I recited, the practiced words feeling like armor, "but I am not responsible for managing their emotions about my boundaries." "But they're your parents, Sloane. They love you." "Love includes respect," I countered, my voice steady. "They lied to me about Dad's health. That is not love." There was a pause. Well, maybe Mom was just exaggerating. You know how she gets. She's just worried. I'm not discussing this, Corinne. I'll see Oscar for his birthday. Please don't turn it into an ambush. I hung up, my hand steady. The old guilt was gone, replaced by something new, something cold and hard and protective. 2 days later, Corinne called again. Her tone was completely different. No wheedling, no pleading. She sounded contrite. Sloane, listen. I'm sorry about that last call. I was just repeating what Mom told me. I didn't know about the indigestion incident. That's not okay. I remained silent, wary. This was a new tactic. Look, she continued, I was thinking, this whole thing has gotten way out of control, and it's stupid. I miss my sister. What if you, me, and Mom just went to dinner? Just us girls. No dad, no husbands, just us. We can go to that little Italian place you like in North Beach. Just talk. For real. I'll be the mediator. It was the one thing that could get past my defenses. The idea of a rational discussion. The hope that my sister might finally be on my side. I don't know, Corinne. Please, Sloane, for me. Let me try to fix this. Mom already agreed. She said she's ready to listen. Against my better judgment, a small, treacherous spark of hope lit inside me. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the breakthrough. I have that big Braxton presentation I'm prepping for, I said, hesitating. Just one night, Sloane. Thursday, 7 p.m. I promise, I'll keep Mom in line. We just need to break the ice. I let out a long breath. Okay, fine, Thursday. I spent the next 2 days meticulously rearranging my work schedule. I had to reschedule a final walkthrough with the Braxton Tech VP, a move I hated making, but I told myself it was for the greater good, reestablishing a connection with my sister and mother. On Thursday at 5:45 p.m., as I was finishing my makeup, my phone buzzed. A text from Corinne. Hey, so, Mom is having second thoughts. She says she just doesn't feel you're really ready to apologize yet, and she doesn't want to get into another fight. She's not going to make it. Rain check. So sorry. I stared at the message. The letters blurred. Doesn't feel you're really ready to apologize? I sank onto the edge of my bed. I had rescheduled a multi-million-dollar client meeting. I had spent 2 days feeling a cautious optimism. I had let my guard down. It wasn't a truce. It was a test. A test to see if I would prioritize them. A test to see if I would clear my schedule, proving I was the one who needed them. And when I did, they yanked the rug out from under me to reinforce their power. It wasn't Corinne's idea. It was Mom's, executed through her. And my sister, my own sister, had set me up. The small spark of hope didn't just die. It exploded. The fury that washed over me was so intense it made me dizzy. It was white-hot and clarifying. This wasn't about a seating chart. It wasn't about misunderstanding or a generational gap. This was about control. It was a calculated, strategic campaign to break my boundaries and force me back into the box they had built for me. The unmarried daughter box. They had lied. They had manipulated my siblings. They had used my father's health. And now, they had used my sister to set a trap, wasting my time and professional capital just to prove a point. The last lingering remnants of my guilt, my sadness, my grief for the relationship I wished we had, it all burned away. I stood up and walked to my desk. I picked up the index card that said, Sibling Pressure. I tore it in half. Dr. Winter's methods were too defensive. This was no longer a negotiation. It was a war, and they had just given me all the ammunition I would ever need. I picked up my phone and opened my calendar. Oscar's birthday. Friday, 3 p.m. I was still going, but I wasn't going to apologize. I wasn't going to meet them halfway. I was going to deliver a gift to my nephew, and if they tried to stop me, I was going to finish this. Friday afternoon. I pulled my car up to Elias and Miranda's house in Marin, the perfectly wrapped gift for Oscar sitting on the passenger seat. It was a professional-grade architectural model kit I'd had to special order from Germany. My plan was simple: arrive at 3 p.m., as I'd told Corinne, give Oscar his gift, give him a hug, and leave before the main party and my parents arrived at 4, a surgical strike, in and out. I parked on the street, not in the driveway, ensuring a quick exit. I smoothed my blouse, took a deep breath, and grabbed the gift. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, my phone vibrated. A text message from Elias. My brother, who hadn't spoken to me directly in 2 weeks, other than to call me immature. I opened it, one short, cryptic sentence. It's a trap. They're all here. Don't come in unless you're ready. I froze, my hand on the gate. A trap. They're all here. My mother's silver Cadillac, my father's black Lincoln. I should have seen them, but they were parked in the garage out of sight. This wasn't a pre-party drop-off. This was a summons. They had moved the timeline. They had gathered the entire family. They were waiting for me, and Elias had warned me. My mind raced. Why? After a united front of shaming me, why the warning? Was it guilt? Had he finally grown a conscience? Or was he just terrified of the inevitable explosion? Did he want to avoid a scene in his perfect suburban home in front of his wife? The motive didn't matter. The information did. He had given me the one thing they didn't want me to have: preparation. I stood there for a full minute, the bright, dinosaur-covered wrapping paper crinkling in my grip. I could get back in my car. I could leave the gift on the porch. I could text Oscar and say I was sick. No, I was done running. I was done being managed. I pushed open the gate. My heels clicked on the stone walkway. I was ready. I rang the doorbell. It was silent for a moment, and then the door swung open. It wasn't Elias. It was my mother. Her smile was tight as a piano wire. "Sloane, what perfect timing," she said, her voice dripping with artificial brightness. "We thought it would be nice to have everyone together to celebrate." Everyone was right. Beyond her shoulder, I saw them, crowded into Elias and Miranda's expansive beige-on-beige living room. It wasn't just my parents and siblings. It was my Aunt Doris examining family photos on the mantel, Uncle Robert sipping something amber from a crystal tumbler. Cousins Jennifer and David huddled near the fireplace. And there, sitting regally in Elias's oversized armchair, was my grandmother, the matriarch, the one who rarely left her retirement community. This was it, the final escalation. This wasn't a coincidence. It was an intervention, a calculated public tribunal designed to overwhelm me with witnesses, to shame me into submission, to force my capitulation through sheer, crushing peer pressure. Elias stood behind my parents, avoiding my eyes. He'd sent the warning, but he wouldn't, or couldn't, stop the execution. Corinne hovered near the hallway, a subtle barrier between me and the back door. Her face was a mask of false concern. The orchestrator of the false truce was now acting as a shepherd. The room went silent. Oscar, oblivious to the crackling tension, spotted me from across the room. "Aunt Sloane!" "You came!" He broke away from the adults and ran toward me, his face a gap-toothed, innocent smile. I knelt to his height, forcing my entire world to shrink down to just him. I smiled, and it was the only genuine expression in the room. "Happy early birthday, buddy. I brought your gift." "Wow, can I open it now?" he asked, bouncing with excitement. Before I could answer, my mother stepped forward, her voice sharp and carrying across the quieted room. "Before presents, Sloane has something she'd like to say to us all." The sheer breathtaking presumption of it stole my breath. My father rose from the sofa, clasping his hands behind his back. "We've been very patient with this little tantrum. It's time to put it to rest." Every eye in the room turned to me, expectant, waiting. The pressure was almost physical, like the air before a thunderstorm. This was the moment. the one they had orchestrated to maximize my disadvantage, the one designed to break me. I stood up slowly, maintaining the composed, professional exterior I'd practiced for clients for years. "I came to celebrate Oscar," I said, my voice perfectly steady, projecting to every corner of the room. "I'm not here to perform for you." A collective gasp. Aunt Doris's hand flew to her pearls. Corinne stepped forward, her voice honey-sweet with manipulation. "Sloane, please, can't you just apologize and move past this? We're family." "There is nothing to apologize for," I replied, the words familiar from my rehearsals with Dr. Winter, but now filled with the cold power of Corinne's betrayal. "I deserve respect, and lying to me about Dad's health, then setting me up with a fake dinner, is not respect." The color drained from Corinne's face. My mother shot her a look of pure fury. The fake dinner wasn't part of the public narrative. A slight movement caught my eye. Aunt Loretta, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, got up. She crossed the room and stood beside me. A quiet, unshakable pillar, the unified family front showed its first crack. My cousin suddenly found the carpet fascinating. "I'm perfectly calm," I said. "I'm also leaving." Oscar clutched his gift, his face crumpling in confusion. You're going?" I squeezed his shoulder gently. "I'll see you soon, buddy, I promise. Enjoy your present." I turned toward the front door. Gift delivered, boundaries maintained, dignity intact. "You're not walking out on this family again." My father moved with surprising speed. He positioned himself directly between me and the exit, crossing his arms over his chest. A physical blockade. "See you." The room fell utterly silent. The confrontation had reached its apex. My heart was pounding against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat, but my voice, when it came, was level. "Move aside, Dad. Not until you show this family some respect." He didn't budge. He was using his physical presence to dominate me, to force my compliance. My mother joined him, standing at his shoulder, a unified wall of parental authority. "We raised you better than this, Sloane. This selfishness. This is not how we raised you." "What you're doing right now," I said, my voice ringing with a clarity that surprised me, "proves exactly why I left that restaurant. You demand respect, but you give none. You'd rather hold me hostage at a child's birthday party than treat me like an equal." Oscar's lower lip trembled. He clutched his unopened gift to his chest, and the adult tension finally broke him. He began to cry, loud, heartbroken sobs. His tears were the catalyst. "Charles, Meredith!" Aunt Loretta's normally soft voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Look at what you're doing. You are ruining your grandson's celebration. This is shameful." Uncle Robert placed his tumbler on the mantel with a deliberate, loud click. "Let her go, Charles. This isn't right." My father's jaw tightened. His authority was crumbling. He drew himself up and unleashed his final weapon, a threat delivered with quiet, intense finality. "If you walk out that door, Sloane, don't expect to be welcomed back." The ultimatum, the one I had dreaded my entire life. Be who we want, or be nothing to us. 6 months ago, those words would have shattered me. They would have sent me scrambling to apologize, to placate, to do anything, to avoid being cast out. Now they merely confirmed the correctness of my path. I met his gaze without flinching. "That's your choice, Dad, not mine." He held firm for one agonizing second longer. I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, shock maybe, surprise at my resolve. Then slowly he stepped aside. I walked to the door, my back straight, my steps measured. I didn't run. At the threshold, I turned to address the room, no longer afraid of who might hear. "I'll be at my home tomorrow. If anyone," and I looked directly at my parents, "wants to have a real conversation, as equals." The door closed behind me with a quiet click. It sounded like freedom. Saturday, 11:00 a.m. sharp. When my doorbell rang, my stomach tightened, but I wasn't afraid. I was prepared. The punctuality was pure Meredith Thompson. I opened the door. There they stood, my parents, side by side in the hallway of my building. Meredith's hair was impeccably styled. Carter's jaw was set in that familiar, rigid line. Several of my neighbors passed by, nodding hello. This public setting wasn't an accident, it was a last-ditch effort to leverage witnesses, to enforce good behavior. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. My voice was calm. They entered. I watched my mother's eyes sweep across my space, taking in the walnut coffee table I'd restored, the statement light fixture, the framed page from Architecture Design. "You've turned the entire family against us," Meredith began, not bothering to remove her coat. "Your behavior was inexcusable," Carter added, crossing his arms. I remained standing, not inviting them to sit. This was my office, my terms. "I didn't invite you here to be attacked. I invited you here for a conversation. If you can't do that, you can leave." "We didn't come to attack," Meredith said, her voice instantly softening into the tone she used to reel me back in. "We came because we're concerned." "For years," I said, cutting her off, "I have accepted being treated as less valuable because I'm not married." The words poured from me, clean and clear. My education, my business, my home, all of it dismissed because I don't have a ring. "Now that's not fair, Sloane," Dad interrupted. "It's not?" I cut him off, a move that made him recoil in shock. The kids' table wasn't isolated. It was the final straw in a pattern of disrespect, a pattern you doubled down on when you lied about Dad being in the hospital. Meredith paled. She hadn't expected me to bring that up. I was worried. "You were manipulative," I stated, not as an accusation, but as a fact. "And Corinne setting me up for that fake dinner, that was calculated." "As your father," Carter began again, his voice rising. "As adults," I interrupted, "we should treat each other with equal respect." My father's face reddened. He was not accustomed to being challenged. "I don't need your approval to value my accomplishments," I continued, "but if you want a relationship with me, you will recognize that my worth is not determined by my marital status. You will stop calling my business a hobby, and you will never, ever lie to me or ambush me again. Those are the terms." A heavy silence filled the room. I watched them exchange a look, that wordless communication honed over 35 years of marriage. Something shifted. They were realizing that the old tactics, the guilt, the threats, none of them worked anymore. What do you want from us, Sloane?" Mom finally asked. The question was quiet, tentative. It might have been the first genuine inquiry into my feelings she'd made in a decade. "Acknowledgement," I said simply. "Respect for my choices." "We've always respected you," Dad muttered, looking at the floor. "Have you?" I countered. "When I graduated summa cum laude, you said, 'That's nice, honey, but don't focus so much on career that you miss your chance at a family.' When I bought this loft, Mom, you said, 'It's a good investment, but don't wait too long to find someone.' When I landed the Westmore account, you both skipped the launch party because Oscar had a soccer game, a regular season game. My father's posture changed, his shoulders lowering. We didn't realize how that appeared to you." "It's not how it appeared," I replied. "It's how it was." I walked to my kitchen island where my professional portfolio sat. I opened it to the Architecture Design feature. "I've had this for 3 months. Did either of you read it?" Their silence was the only answer I needed. "I don't need you to understand my life," I said more gently. "I just need you to respect it. I will not attend family functions where I am treated as less than. No more kids' tables. No more dismissive comments. No more marriage pressure. Period." Meredith's hands twisted together. Will you be at Christmas?" The question held the real stakes. "That depends," I answered. "Will I be seated with the adults?" My father's jaw worked for a moment. He looked out my window at the Oakland skyline, as if seeing for the first time that I had built a life here, one with its own foundation. "Of course you would be," he said, the words gruff, reluctant. It was the smallest of concessions, but it was a start. 6 months. That night at Aurelia no longer stung. It was a scar, a reminder of a necessary surgery. My business was flourishing. The Braxton Tech project was a massive success, leading to 3 new high-profile referrals. I'd hired another junior designer and was scouting for a larger office space. My relationships had been completely recalibrated. Aunt Loretta and I had monthly lunches. She'd become a true confidant, sharing stories about my mother I'd never heard, painting a picture of a woman raised to believe her only value was in her marriage. Corinne and I had met for coffee. It was tense. I laid out, in no uncertain terms, how her participation in the false truce had been a deep betrayal. She cried, apologized, and admitted she was so caught in Mom's orbit she didn't even think. We were slowly, cautiously rebuilding. Elias remained distant, firmly in our parents' camp, but his messages were less condescending. The invitation to Oscar's actual birthday party, which I'd attended on my terms, had come with a handwritten note from him. "We saved you a seat at the grown-up table," a small but significant acknowledgement. My parents and we were navigating new terrain. The escalations had stopped. When my studio was featured in a local business magazine, I received a text from my mother. "Saw your article. Nicely done." 6 months ago, those 5 words would have sent me soaring. Now I recognize them as the bare minimum. Progress, but not a transformation. When I took Oscar and Rowan to the Science Museum, Riley asked innocently, "Are you mad at Grandma and Grandpa?" "Not mad," I explained, helping her build a magnetic tower. "Just making sure they treat me with respect, like when you tell me to use my words instead of hitting Oscar." She nodded. Exactly like that. Christmas Eve. We gathered at Montello's, an upscale restaurant that reminded me of Aurelia, but the memories here would be different. I arrived, not in an uncomfortable dress I'd been ordered to wear, but in a deep green velvet pantsuit I adored. The maitre d' led me to the private dining room. I was seated prominently at the main table, between Aunt Loretta and Uncle Robert. My mother approached, wearing the pearl necklace Dad had given her for their 35th anniversary. "Sloane, you look lovely." When their friends, the Harts, arrived, my father gestured to me. "And this is our daughter, Sloane." Mr. Hart smiled politely. "Nice to meet you. What do you do, Sloane?" Before I could answer, my father said, "Sloane is an award-winning designer. Her firm just completed that new Braxton Tech headquarters downtown. It was featured in architecture design." I nearly dropped my wine glass. He said it. "Not our daughter who works in decorating. Not our daughter who's still figuring things out. A full, proud public acknowledgement of who I actually was." Later, as midnight approached, I raised my glass. "A toast," I said, my voice clear, "to family, the ones we're born to, and the ones we choose." I looked around the table, at Aunt Loretta smiling, at Corinne, who raised her glass back to me, at my mother, who looked strained but held my gaze, and at my father, who nodded just once and drank. Standing on the restaurant's terrace later, overlooking the glittering bay, I reflected on the journey. That night at the kids' table was designed to humiliate me. Instead, it had liberated me. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't a confrontation. It's not about winning an argument. It's about living your life so fully, so successfully, and so joyfully that the people who tried to diminish you are forced to reconsider the very definition of success. And if you're lucky, they just might learn to see you clearly. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.